Grief by Icedcave is a remake of his old impossible level Slaughterhouse. This old 1.9 impossible level is pretty lazy and terrible for 70% of the level. It's mostly just impossibly tight spam, with the game mode getting switched around every now and again. This level was, as many impossible levels were back then, rather popular on YouTube, getting over 1 million views on Tosh Deluxe's channel. The chronology of the 3 levels, Grief, Old Slaughterhouse and New Slaughterhouse, is quite complicated. But as far as I know, Slaughterhouse is a sequel to Old Slaughterhouse, and Grief is a remake of Old Slaughterhouse. So does that make Grief a prequel to New Slaughterhouse? I have no idea. But anyways, Icedcave first announced the development of Grief in January of 2022, and in the description he says, "The sequel or prequel, honestly making this for me, to finish off Slaughterhouse where it started and giving the original the remake I planned on giving it during 2018. I really like the sentiment here, honestly. The idea of remaking an old impossible level, if said level is really terrible, is a great idea, honestly. And let's be real, Old Slaughterhouse was terrible, so I think this is a good idea for a new Icedcave level. The level really developed and improved over the course of the new previews which released. The level started off looking pretty average in all honesty. The deco seemed rather generic in parts, and the level didn't have much of its own individuality and personality until newer parts were added and older parts were replaced. But the replacement of the parts just goes to show how Icedcave genuinely cares about the quality of Grief's decoration. I've already dedicated a whole video to my reasoning toward why I love Slaughterhouse, and Grief, in my opinion, entirely succeeds with recreating these qualities that Slaughterhouse had. I actually love Grief's deco. I think that it being hell themed is a silly reason as to why it shouldn't be liked, since it is unique and innovative in its decoration when it comes to the hell theme. It has its own unique take on the genre of level, and it makes it really awesome overall. I think it makes itself stand out, mainly due to the spam gameplay and the way the level is decorated, especially in parts like Grenade of Tacos. That part is really pretty. I definitely think that Grief looks a lot better than other hell themed levels, but I do suppose that is rather expected considering the time the level was made in. This level is in 2.2, and the other hell theme levels are mostly in 1.9, 2.0 or 2.1, and we all know how limited those editors are when compared to the 2.2 editor. Grief's main strength for me is its atmosphere and its intensity. Using the song Stalemate is honestly perfect considering the sheer intensity of its drop parts and the calmness of its break parts. Icedcave perfectly uses this to his advantage to build up in the slower parts and release all the tension in the drop. As I've said before, Grenade of Tacos is really pretty, and I think it's the perfect part to have at the drop. Just look at how crazy these effects and visuals are. The grey colouring makes it stand out so much, and that's amazing. When I originally saw the final showcase of Grief, I actually thought that the level ended around halfway through, but I realised that that's where Old Slaughterhouse actually ends, and Grief is an extension of Old Slaughterhouse, so one of my only nitpicks with Grief was just me not knowing Old Slaughterhouse properly. One of the things I appreciate about the current top 10 Slaughterhouse, the level which Grief is a prequel to, is just how incredibly difficult the level actually looks. As someone who is new to the game, Slaughterhouse perfectly shows the sheer skill required for a human to play Geometry Dash at a top level, and in turn, that motivates players to try and beat the list and improve, because they also want to be as good as the person on screen. Both W Popoff and Zoink, the two best players in my opinion, said that Slaughterhouse and Space UK were a huge motivator for them improving in Geometry Dash, and I can guarantee, once Grief is verified, it will have that same effect on newcomers. Icedcave as a creator generally has grown on me recently. I think his levels are honestly pretty cool. I've grown out of this mentality that any hell themed level is instantly generic and terrible, and in turn, that has made me appreciate Icecave's work much more. I really liked Fever Dream when the redeco came out a while back. Injury is super cool, and I've already clarified my appreciation for his hell themed top 1s. I think that Grief would be a better top 1 than Tidal Wave, and the reason I think that is because of Tidal Wave's beach theming. It just doesn't really belong in the hardest level in my opinion. Even though it has been done many times, Hell theme is the perfect theming for a top 1 demon to have, since it reflects the difficulty of the level. Difficulty would generally have connotations of terror and pain, and Tidal Wave's theme of beach has positive connotations, such as happiness, which I don't think is particularly fitting for a top 1 demon. So why do I think that Grief is better than other upcoming top 1s? I think the history of the level plays a huge part in my positive regard towards it. Old Impossible levels are genuinely cool to me. Silent Clubstep, for example, is cool because of how old and iconic the level is, and Grief is no different, except Grief is actually a complete remake and redeco and reimagination of the Old Impossible level. The Silent Clubstep redeco, while looking cool, suffers from being rather boring and generic in its decoration, and Silent Acropolis, another Old Impossible level remake, while also looking cool, doesn't even need to be redecoed in the first place. Most of Silent Acropolis's personality came from its decoration style being identical to that of the original Acropolis. Yes, old Slaughterhouse is, well, old, but the difference here is that old Slaughterhouse is really just a layout for half of the level. The level is physically and humanly impossible, so I think it is exempt from my general preference of an old level staying old. Another top 1 verification happening at the moment is supposed to be Apocalyptic Trilogy by AP Team. I think this level again serves no purpose and is just attention seeking. I think the AP Team just wanted to exploit the popularity of the Apocalyptic Trilogy. After all, the levels in the trilogy are some of the most popular demons in the entire game. Like Silent Acropolis, I don't think there is much need for this redeco to exist. The Apocalyptic Trilogy is already fine, and there's no reason to make it other than to utilise this popularity. Trick, the verifier, hasn't played Apocalyptic Trilogy in a while however, so maybe it sucks to play, I don't even know. Considering the generally negative perception to the Apocalyptic Trilogy's gameplay, I don't think it is very good to be honest. But speaking of good, I think the main top 1 which may compete with Grief as the best one is Vehemence. This level is pretty old actually, despite the way it looks, and has been in an open verification for a long time. Its theming is great. It's not quite as good for a top 1 as the Hell theme, but the gothic castle theming along with the bright red colour scheme is super cool and engaging to watch. Vehemence is also one of the few top 1 demons which I actually think looks to be quite enjoyable, although I obviously cannot make a judgment on that since I've not played any of the upcoming top 1s mentioned. One of the cooler things about Grief also is the fact that Doggie is the verifier of the level. Doggie is arguably the perfect candidate for the Grief verification since he is the one who verified Slaughterhouse. Doggie is also a really entertaining streamer, so having Grief be verified this way means people are more likely to watch, which is great. We want more people in verification streams of new top 1s because that builds hype, and hype is so much fun to have. Doggie's current progress on the level is 65 to 92, which isn't a huge amount, but we're still in the early days of the verification streams. And the longer it takes, the more cool it will be when it's finally verified. So I don't really think it matters that much if Doggie does take a long time to verify the level. Grief's length is also amazing for the streaming experience. The level is quite long, so there's a lot of nervousness to be built up within both the streamer and the viewer, which makes it much more intense and epic. I think overall, Doggie is going to have a pretty challenging time verifying Grief, but as a viewing experience, it will be awesome. So when will this verification even be? Who knows? W Popoff is working on Vehemence, another upcoming top 1 at the moment, so maybe Grief won't even be top 1 when it comes out.